Hey everyone, welcome back to The Explainer. Today we are unpacking a seriously fascinating structural phenomenon in modern politics. We're going to look directly at actual internal blueprints and documents to figure out exactly how private political associations operate inside major established political parties, literally on a day-to-day basis. It's kind of like looking under the hood of a massive machine. So let's dive right into the mechanics.
Here is our roadmap for today. We're going to start with the mechanics of infiltration, then look at leveraging party infrastructure, dive into daily operations and control, visualize centralized power, and finally, we'll wrap up by examining the voters' linkage gap. All right, Section 1, the mechanics of infiltration, the pipeline.
What's really wild to me here is the sheer systematic nature of this whole process. The source material lays out this highly specific four-step chronological pipeline. Step 1. The private association recruits and prepares candidates specifically for a major party's primary election. Step 2, by doing that, it gets access to the major party's resources. Step 3, the organization uses those exact same resources to help their recruited candidate actually win that primary. And finally, Step 4, this drops the candidate right onto the general election ballot under the major party's highly recognizable label. It's an incredibly structured sequence, you know? It moves a candidate directly from a private internal pipeline straight onto the public stage.
Moving on to Section 2, leveraging party infrastructure, fueling the campaign.
So, what does gaining access actually look like in real life? Well, when a private organization runs a candidate in a major party primary, they are going after some very specific, highly valuable assets. We're talking membership lists, massive pools of deep voter data, pre-existing activist networks, and established fundraising channels. I mean, these aren't just little perks. They're the actual fuel for the day-to-day operations of the infiltration strategy. Tapping into all this saves the private association massive amounts of time and money, which allows them to punch way above their weight class on a daily basis.
And I think this quote brilliantly illustrates the core philosophy behind the whole strategy. The research states the major party ballot line functions as both a brand and a distribution system. The absolute crucial point here is that the target party's label isn't necessarily being adopted for its ideological purity, not at all. Rather, it's being used as a highly effective, ready-made delivery mechanism. It functions as a trusted brand name that instantly signals legitimacy to the voter, and a distribution system that practically guarantees the candidate gets in front of the widest possible audience.
Which brings us to Section 3, daily operations and control, inside the chapter.
Okay, so based on these newly elected chapter leadership documents, we can see exactly how the daily grind is broken down into specific working bodies. You've got the Ecosocialist Commission, which is co-chaired by Connor V. and Diane W. You have the Electoral Commission, steered by Marshall S. and Logan G., and even Discord moderators like Ida A., Hubson H., and Alexis W. Daily infiltration isn't just some abstract concept. It is the highly granular, on-the-ground work of moderating digital community spaces, managing member education, and directing candidate endorsements through these specialized commissions.
But, here is where the structural dynamic gets kind of complex. While these working bodies control absolutely vital daily processes, things like field strategy, recruitment, and resource allocation, their internal notes and officer lists are often anonymized, or they're just kept completely internal. So outsiders, and sometimes literally even the association's own rank-and-file members, are totally prevented from tracing exactly who is making these critical decisions, the true decision-makers who are actually operating the levers of the major party's infrastructure. They remain largely hidden, right out of public view.
Let's look at Section 4, visualizing centralized power, the leadership network. Now, look really closely at this network map. It's derived directly from the chapter's leadership roster. The gray lines show your standard single roles, but notice the red nodes. These red lines trace individuals holding multiple roles across completely different commissions. If you follow the connections for Connor V., for instance, you'll see him serving as co-chair of both the Executive Committee and the Ecosocialist Commission. Look at Logan G. on both the Electoral and International Commissions. Justin S. spans International and Communications. By mapping out these overlapping positions, we can literally see exactly where the internal control of the organization is most intensely concentrated. Which leads us to this seriously striking statistic: 58%. Just wrap your head around that for a second. The analysis of this leadership network reveals that just 7 multi-role officers hold 58% of all the co-chair positions across the entire chapter. I mean, that is a massive centralization of operational power. We're talking about a very small, tightly knit group that is effectively steering the strategic direction of an organization that is in turn leveraging a major political party's infrastructure. Finally, Section 5, the voters' linkage gap,
the transparency problem. So, what does the voter actually experience at the end of the day? Well, on election day, there is this stark split screen. On the public side, voters just see the candidate and the major party label right next to their name. It looks entirely standard, totally normal. But on the opaque side, completely hidden from view, is the private association that recruited the candidate, the staffing pipeline they provided, the strategic direction they dictate, and the organizational loyalties the candidate holds to those centralized internal leaders we literally just mapped out.
The source material defines this dynamic as the linkage gap. Basically, it occurs when an unaccountable private leadership structure essentially merges its operations with a major public party. Because the private association is using the public ballot line as a distribution system, its internal leadership becomes part of the effective decision-making apparatus of that major party. But because those leaders remain obscured, voters are essentially being asked to support a political project they simply cannot fully see or evaluate. Which leaves us with this final, fundamental question to consider. How can you, the voter, fully evaluate a political project when the leadership driving it remains totally opaque? When the public face of a campaign is completely disconnected from the hidden, highly centralized architecture making all those daily decisions, it creates a profound tension between electoral transparency and organizational strategy. It is undeniably a brilliant logistical maneuver, but one that really challenges our basic assumptions about how much we actually know when we cast a ballot. Thanks so much for joining me on this explainer today. Keep asking questions and keep looking at the structures behind the systems.